She kept asking the same question repeatedly until Karoline had enough, and what unfolded next left the entire room in shock. The place was crowded, with a line of cameras positioned along the back wall, their lenses focused on the podium where Karoline Leavitt stood, calm and self-assured. She was accustomed to challenging audiences, but this day carried a different weight. The atmosphere in the Washington, D.C. briefing room buzzed with expectation and a quiet strain simmering just below the surface. She adjusted the microphone and said, "Good afternoon, everyone. Let's begin. Before we continue, I have a small request for you. If you are interested in this story, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch videos without subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, but it makes a big difference for us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you very much. Now let's go back to the video." Hands darted up across the room as journalists, eager for a scoop, competed to ask their questions first. Karoline nodded toward a familiar reporter from a prominent network who inquired about the administration's latest stance on tax cuts. She responded with ease, offering the polished, practiced answer that came naturally in her role. Then came a follow-up on education reform, which she handled just as smoothly. She was a pro at this, standing tall, steering the narrative, and managing the press with expertise. But then, a sharp voice sliced through the room. "Ms. Leavitt, let's address the real issue here." It was her, the aggressive liberal reporter Karoline knew all too well, always itching to stir the pot. Sitting near the front, she leaned forward with a faint smirk, her pen tapping steadily against her notepad. Karoline kept her cool and said, "Go ahead." The reporter pounced. "Do you believe the administration's policies are deliberately crafted to hold certain communities back? The data seems to suggest—" Karoline raised a hand, cutting in. "I've addressed that before. Our focus is on policies that lift all Americans, no matter their background. If you'd like to talk about today's topic, I'm all ears." A few murmurs spread through the room, but the reporter pressed on. "You didn't really answer, though. Can you say directly whether—" "I did answer," Karoline interjected, her voice steady but firm. She glanced at the other journalists, signaling she was ready to move forward. For a brief moment, it seemed the tension might ease, but then the same voice cut in again. "I just don't understand why you're dodging this. It's a simple yes or no. Are these policies suppressing marginalized groups?" The mood shifted. Some reporters exchanged looks, a mix of curiosity and unease. Nobody enjoyed a press conference turning into a standoff, but that's where it was heading. Karoline exhaled slowly. "I'm not dodging anything. I'm staying focused. If you've got a question tied to today's discussion, I'll take it. If not, I'm moving on." The reporter leaned closer to her microphone. "So that's a no comment?" The room grew taut, the weight of the exchange pressing down. It wasn't just a briefing anymore. It was a scene. A hush settled, not empty but charged, like the calm before a storm. Karoline planted both hands on the podium. "I've answered you. Let's proceed." She pointed to another journalist, but before they could speak, the same voice interrupted yet again. "Why is it so tough for you to give a straight answer?" A flicker of frustration crossed Karoline's face, subtle, just a tightening around her eyes, but noticeable to those watching closely. She wasn't new to this game. She understood reporters had a role, but there was a line between seeking answers and stealing the spotlight. "I don't waste time," she said. "If you've got a fresh question, I'll take it. Otherwise, others deserve a turn." The reporter smirked. "Sure, new question. Why is this administration so scared of openness?" A few gasps slipped out, and journalists scribbled faster, sensing a bigger story brewing. Karoline blinked once, her grip on the podium briefly tightening before she released it with a faint exhale. Her smile wasn't warm. It was calculated, a silent acknowledgement of the game being played. She paused before replying, "Openness is what we're about. But what you're doing isn't about that. It's about drama." The reporter's smirk wavered slightly. Another journalist tried to jump in. "Karoline, if I could—" But the same voice cut through. "So you're brushing off real concerns as drama?" People deserve honest answers. The cameras captured it all, the slight tilt of Karoline's head, the shifting postures of other journalists, some annoyed that the event had been derailed. A seasoned reporter muttered to a colleague, "This isn't reporting, it's a show." But the reporter didn't care. She knew a prolonged clash like this was social media dynamite. Karoline saw it too. She could either keep engaging, feeding the fire, or end it. She sighed, glancing at security off to the side. No words were needed. The look said enough. The room grew heavier. Everyone sensed what was coming. This wasn't just a spat anymore. It was escalating. The reporter, in her mid-30s, with piercing eyes and unyielding confidence, didn't budge, her pen resting on her notepad, a faint smirk lingering. Karoline straightened. "One last time. If you've got a relevant question, I'll answer. I'm not here for bad faith debates." The reporter gave a soft chuckle. "Bad faith? I'm doing my job. Isn't that what a free press is for?" Karoline didn't flinch. "A free press holds people accountable. You're trying to make this a circus." A few journalists murmured, sensing the shift. This wasn't about policy anymore. It was a power struggle. The reporter tapped her pen once. "So, to be clear, are you refusing to answer because you can't or because you won't?" A few sharp inhales rippled through the room, bracing for the response. Karoline measured her words. "I'm refusing to play along. This isn't about you." The reporter's smirk flickered, then she leaned back, arms crossed. "Right, because expecting clarity is a game." The tension spiked. Karoline adjusted the microphone and stepped back slightly. "I think we're finished here." The words jolted the room. The reporter's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me?" Karoline stayed calm. "You're not here for discussion. You want a headline. Stay and listen if you'd like, but I'm done with your questions." The reporter let out a dry laugh. "So, silencing the press." "Got it." Karoline's jaw tightened. She'd anticipated that spin. She glanced at security again, a quiet signal, and the mood snapped into full confrontation. The air grew thick as a uniformed officer stepped forward. The reporter's smirk vanished. "You're really doing this?" she asked, her voice low but cutting. Karoline replied evenly, "Freedom of the press doesn't mean derailing a briefing." The reporter scoffed, glancing around as if rallying the room. Some journalists shifted uncomfortably, a few scribbled notes, but no one spoke up. The officer took another step. For a moment, the reporter wavered. Stand firm and force a removal for maximum drama, or leave on her terms and shape the story herself. Karoline watched the calculation unfold. Then, slowly, the reporter grabbed her notepad and stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "This is shameful," she muttered, loud enough for the mics, then added, "You can eject me, but you can't bury the truth." Karoline said nothing. The door shut behind her, and an uneasy silence followed. The cameras kept rolling as journalists hesitated, unsure of the next move. Then a voice from the back broke through. "Karoline, was that the right call?" She turned. "It was necessary." Another chimed in. "Won't this blow up?" She knew it would. Clips were likely already spreading online, headlines forming. Karoline Leavitt ousts reporter for tough questions. She squared her shoulders. "We're here for discussion, not chaos. Anyone with real questions, I'm listening." A hand rose slowly and the briefing limped on, but the real fallout was just starting. By the time she left the podium, her phone hummed with alerts, staff whispering, glancing at screens. The clip was exploding, trending under hashtags like # silencing the press #. An aide caught up as she headed to her office. "It's everywhere. Some headlines are neutral, just the facts, but others—" She trailed off, scrolling. "Leavitt crushes press freedom. Reporter removed for truth." Karoline gave a wry half-laugh. "Truth?" She was performing? The aide nodded. "Doesn't matter. It's how it's being framed." Karoline had seen this coming the moment she signaled security. Post the clash, strip the context, cue the outrage. "What's our base saying?" she asked, stepping into her office. "They're with you. Conservatives call it a win, praising your poise. The usual voices are defending you. She nodded. And the White House? The aide hesitated. They're staying quiet, not criticizing yet. That pause lingered. And her? The aide scrolled. She's all in. Did a live hit, calling it a chilling moment for press freedom. She's booked everywhere. Karoline muttered. She wanted this, and we handed it to her. The aide bit her lip. So, what's our move? Karoline gazed out the window at the growing swarm of reporters below. She could let it ride or seize control before the story solidified. Her jaw set. The fight was far from over. It was just heating up. The noise outside swelled as another news van arrived. Inside, Karoline stood by her desk as her aides tracked the flood of headlines. They're divided, one said. Some say you handled a disruption like a pro. Others call it an assault on democracy. Karoline smirked. An assault on democracy for ejecting someone who wouldn't follow the rules? The aide stayed silent. They both knew truth didn't win in the digital frenzy. Another aide stepped in, phone raised. She posted her statement. Karoline braced herself. Read it. He recited, Today I was removed for asking hard questions. This administration touts transparency but silences scrutiny. That should scare every American who values accountability and free speech. Karoline laughed dryly. No mention of her derailing the whole thing? He shook her head. Nope, pure victim mode. It was textbook. Curated outrage for maximum impact. Karoline's first thought was to counter hard, call a briefing, and spell out the facts. Removing a disruptive reporter wasn't censorship, but she knew that would just keep the cycle churning. She tapped her desk. What's our best shot? The aide paused. Release the full unedited video before her version takes over. Let people see you warned her repeatedly. The second aide agreed. It's not defensive, it's just the facts. Karoline weighed it. Facts didn't always sway perception, but it was a start. Do it, she said. They sprang into action, prepping the footage. Within an hour, the raw video dropped online. No edits, no spin, just a straightforward post. Watch the full exchange between Karoline Leavitt and reporter. Views surged, comments pouring in. Some angry, some backing her. Her phone buzzed with a text from a media ally. Clever, this undercuts them. But she knew it wasn't that clean. The reporter was already on TV, brow furrowed, telling an anchor, I was just doing my job, asking vital questions, and got removed. That's an attack on journalism. The anchor nodded gravely. Did you feel threatened? Karoline rolled her eyes as the reporter sighed. Not physically, but professionally? Absolutely. The segment cut to pundits decrying a dangerous precedent. Karoline locked her phone, exasperated. The truth was out, but belief was optional. In the hallway, staff huddled around a conservative channel playing her full clip. The host paused it, pointing out, She interrupts constantly, this wasn't reporting, it was a stunt. A panelist added, She pushed for a reaction, got it, and now plays martyr. Karoline watched, arms crossed. The divide was stark. Conservatives hailed her resolve, while mainstream outlets cast her as a press-stifling tyrant. The story wouldn't fade. For days it fueled debates, talk shows, and memes, some lampooning the reporter, others vilifying Karoline. She knew consensus was a pipe dream in this climate. But then, on a panel, a respected veteran journalist spoke up. Let's be real. This wasn't about truth. She wanted a moment and got it. She asked, got an answer, didn't like it, kept pushing, not for answers, but for a fight. When she was removed, she cried suppression. That's not journalism, it's activism. The host pressed, so Karoline was right? He shrugged. I'm saying we should care what reporting really is. Karoline exhaled. Someone got it. But the damage was set. Minds were made up. An aide peeked in. Interview request from... No, Karoline cut in. You don't even know who. Doesn't matter. I'm done feeding this. The facts are out. Let them wrestle with it. The aide nodded and left. Karoline scrolled the endless alerts. This wasn't just about one briefing. It was the media's new reality. Truth sidelined for clicks and fury. She looked at her aide. One last statement. What's it say? Karoline smiled faintly. 4 words. Watch the full video. Because that was it. The truth, whether anyone cared to see it. In a time when clicks trump context, media integrity hangs by a thread, and the boundary between reporting and activism blurs. Was Karoline right or wrong? That's not the core issue. It's whether we still value truth enough to spot manipulation. What's your take? Thank you for watching till the end video. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories.